bringing you the very, very latest as the Middle East crisis continues. We want to again talk about oil prices, the oil supply that is happening right now. For more on this perspective, I want to bring in our next guest to help break it all down, the chief oil analyst for OPIS, Denton Cinquegrana. Great to have you on, Denton. And I think a lot of people were looking at what was happening starting earlier this week, that was happening into the weekend, and thought maybe these prices would have been much higher, talking about maybe even $100 a barrel. Tell us why that isn't the case right now.
Yeah, the market's actually been pretty calm. I mean, we did see a big move up, as you said. Haven't seen yet the triple digits. I think right now the world has enough oil to get by. The problem becomes with the Strait of Hormuz closed, you're looking about 10 to 15 million barrels a day that are now not traveling through the Strait. So eventually that adds up. And then if ships can't come in, producers in the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, they're not going to be able to load ships, and eventually their storage is going to fill up, and it's going to back into the system, and they're going to have to reduce production. We're already starting to see some of that with Iraq. Probably if that doesn't kind of fix itself over the next, say, 10 days to 2 weeks, I think we could be talking about another leg up at that point.
And Denton, how big was this moment when President Trump announced that yesterday that there would be security guarantees in the Strait of Hormuz? If that move didn't happen, would we have already seen maybe an uptick?
No, I'm not sure that made much of a difference, because I still think the ships are sitting still for the most part. I think they're waiting on direction and wait until all the policy is fulfilled, or at least we have a better framework of it. The one thing that concerns me is if, yeah, you have a naval escort, that's probably great, but you also have a bullseye on you. That kind of scares me as well. I think the backstopping the insurance, I think that would be will eventually be a huge help in the long run, and maybe get the ships start flowing again.
And what about, Denton, if, in the coming days there is more word out of a possible even ceasefire, or if Iran wants to come to the table once again, does that news really help the overall market?
I do. I think that helps with the psychology of the market for sure. And with Brent now being in the $83, $84 per barrel area, and WTI in the mid 70s, I think that would bring prices down probably several dollars. I think that would get some cooler heads to prevail. But then from there, you have a pause. Like, okay, we do get a ceasefire, say, for example, using that scenario. How long does it last for? What happens next? So it's just the first piece of the puzzle, if you will.
Yeah, it really, really is. I was thinking about this, though, Denton. I was so glad that you were coming on to help break down some of the supply chain issues as well. But what about, it seems like if this happened in the early 90s or the 2000s, we would have saw that oil futures really spike. How come that hasn't been the case here?
Yeah, I think one of the main points here is that the United States is the biggest producer of oil in the world right now. Now, granted, you can make arguments that, maybe it's too light and too sweet or whatever, but that's getting into kind of the chemistry of the oil. Fact of the matter is, the United States is producing upwards of 13.5 million barrels a day. Obviously, we're not as dependent on Middle Eastern oil as we once were. Was looking at numbers from the Energy Information Administration for December, so they are delayed, and this obviously has taken place before all of this has gone down. But suffice it to say, we are not importing as much from the Middle East as we used to. Actually, our largest import or exporter of crude oil to the United States, it's Canada. So we get a lot of oil from Canada. Obviously, use a lot of our own. Mexico, coming soon to a theater near you, Venezuela. So again, it's one of those things where we've reduced the reliance on the Middle Eastern oil, and that's why you're probably not seeing the market take off like it probably would have in the early 90s or in the 2000s.
It seems like right now, with this time frame that we are looking at, President Trump and the administration said this could go anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks, but they said it could go longer as well. What is the threshold for traders that are looking at these oil futures? What kind of days are they looking at? It could next week, if this continues as the same trajectory, is that when, like you said, we could see another leg up?
Yeah, I think probably over the next week or two. I think the longer this obviously goes on, and you're absolutely right. The president said, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and the Secretary of Defense earlier today said, well, there's really no timeline, but did say, reference that same 4 or 5 weeks. But the fact that there's also acknowledging that there's we have to be done with this by this date. That is going to keep traders kind of sitting where they are. But like I said, as we continue and without resolution, there's the potential for the market to spike some more.
All right, there we go. Denton, thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. We always appreciate the perspective.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you.